Hello everybody and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name's James.
How are we doing? Game week 6 is over.
It wasn't too bad. Saved somewhat by my boys last night, obviously.
Yep.
From what would have looked like a complete car crash. How was it for you?
Game week rank of 1,089,000.
Nice.
Which is okay. 62 points with a -4.
That's good this week.
Probably the worst hit ever. I sold Danny Ings for Harry Kane. That was going to happen regardless, and I captained Harry Kane. And the reality is that
you've got future captaincies.
Long term, it's fine. But then I forced the move to get rid of Harrison Reed and bring in Ross Barkley as my second transfer. I didn't need to make that transfer, but I wanted to get rid of Harrison Reed, and I thought Ross Barkley is a good long-term option as well. I like
amazing assist from Harrison Reed this weekend as well.
Net. Obviously, I would have got more points had I stuck with Danny Ings and ended up playing Suchek instead of Barkley and left Harrison Reed on the bench. But I can't complain with 62 points. Helped with Suj James getting bonus points and a solid performance 8-pointer. Antonio keeps chipping away. That's 3 goals in 6 games.
Might not be chipping away much longer.
We don't know yet.
Waiting on injury news.
Obviously, Son and Kane. Kane was my captain. Son with another 11-pointer. And Wilf Zaha chipped in with 13 points.
That's,
so
that's your differential there, mate. Wilf
2
Zaha.
weeks, 9 and 13, has been particularly good. 2 goals and an assist in games. I think, to be fair, against Fulham, Palace were actually particularly good. They provided a lot of attacking threat and had a lot of shots. But against Brighton the week before, they weren't that good, and they've still chipped. Well, they say they weren't that good. They had 1 shot on target, and he's still come away with a nice little haul here. So fairly comfortable, James. And I mean, it's a little bit not so much for my FPL team, definitely for my Sky team. What could have been really Trent and Robbo at the back, bar the width of a penalty edge box, could have been clean sheets potentially, and so on and so on. So it is what it is. We move on.
Just interesting on Zaha. Only Heung-min Son, who now has more points than Harry Kane, Mohamed Salah and Hatrick Bamford are the only players who've got more points than Wilfried Zaha, 7.3 million, which interestingly, that price point's a bit of a wasteland actually between Zaha and Grealish at 7.3 and James Rodriguez at 8. There's nothing.
Yeah,
there's literally nothing. So it might be, I mean, look, 48 points, Wilfried Zaha. If you told me beyond that at this stage, I never would have believed you, mate, in 6 games. So 13 and 9 and 15 and 8 blanks against Everton and Chelsea. Decent. Yep. And look, decent run of fixtures still coming for Palace. He's going to hang around in your team for a while, mate.
Yeah, no doubt.
But he's doing well at the moment.
No doubt he will be there. And he's still on pens, isn't he? So,
and he's OP.
So sticking with him. What about you?
53 points. Kane captaincy assists. Heung-min Son's 11. Raul Jimenez 9. Phil Foden 6. Luke Ayling 6. Blanks for Pereira, Suchek, Robertson, Trent, Matt Ryan, Brighton and Hove Albion. We need to have words.
Yes, we do.
And obviously Suchek came into the team for Gareth Bale for me. Gareth might have to move on this week. We'll come on to him when we do the games. I obviously bought Calvert-Lewin in place of Wood. So, I mean, that cost me a point, but then I didn't lose the value that Chris Wood lost. So, it is what it is.
So, you're on 295 points now. Game total rank 3.3 million.
Oh, yeah, it's worth screaming about, isn't it?
I'm at 313 points, so there's about 20 points between us, give or take.
What's your rank?
2.4 million. Coming up to 2.5, really.
So 20 points worth nearly a million in our shit rank territory. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, 2 weeks ago I was 4.3, so I've knocked off 2 million of my rank in 2 weeks. If I can knock off another 1.5 million in the next 4 weeks, by game week 10, I want to be inside the top 1 million. That's my game plan.
I'm just chipping away at the moment.
Yeah, I want to set myself these little milestone goals. So game week 10. You
were thinking about wildcarding, no?
A couple of weeks ago, not at the moment.
Gone, yeah.
Completely off the radar at the moment. I don't need to make any moves this week. Particularly Trent and Robbo will stick around. Suj James, I'm comfortable taking the rough with the smooth with Reece James. If I get the odd 1 or 2 pointer, if he played 3 out of 4 games, I'd keep playing him every week. So I'm happy with him.
I think you just have to accept that's going to happen.
Barkley, Son, and Zaha are cool. Antonio, assuming he's fit, and Kane, fine. I've still got Dallas on the bench, who I can play any week. I may even play him this week against Leicester. Suchek can come on. Tyrick Mitchell still playing despite PVA being
it's like
available.
Every day I get that question. Do you think you'll get his place? I don't know.
Who knows?
I don't pick the team. But PVA is fit. So for me, it's a matter of time.
Yeah. Werner and Havertz are the two that I'm not sure about. And we saw yesterday what Burnley can do at home and how solid they can be.
That's interesting.
So,
because if I move Bale out this week and it's moving him out on the idea, I think that he probably doesn't start Sunday. But I won't make no decision on it till after Tottenham's Europa League game on Thursday. I would probably go to Pulisic.
Yeah, which is different to Havertz and Werner. Pulisic, from what I've seen with the performance in the United game, is making runs into the box. Like, he's going to win penalties. Just the way he glides past people and the pace he has, he's going to win a lot of assists and penalties. I think he's going to become more of an assist magnet than a goal magnet. But Pulisic's an interesting shout. Like Pulisic I own in Sky, for example. It's not going anywhere yet.
I might move him on in Sky, ironically. It's complicated. So's my life.
Interesting weekend of football. I think, in the words of Eminem, back to normality.
Yes, basically that's the case. 19 goals, less than 2 per game. I did say we would hit normality at some point, and I think it was beginning to happen in game week 5, and because we still had sort of Chelsea, Southampton, Tottenham, West Ham in there with the 2-3-3 draws, we didn't really notice. So yeah, normality, it's back at where it should be. I mean, actually that's lower than where it should be. You're normally looking at around about 27 goals or so for a game week, which is also, there's obviously a lot of low scores this week. I mean, the average has ended up being high in the end. I say high at 48, at reasonable, because of Son and Kane last night, basically, is why it's jumped quite a bit.
Very high ownership.
The week before, in game week 5, we obviously had, it felt like everybody returned, didn't it? From Rashford, Fernandes, Sterling, Salah, Mane, Kane, Son, all these big hitters, it felt like they all returned. Whereas this week, it just felt like Heung-min Son and nobody else, basically. And that's the reality. And I think you should always be conscious when you have a game week where all the popular, let's say, players go off, that there's going to be a week where that swings back round the other way. These guys don't return in every single game, unless, of course, you are Heung-min Son, who basically is, if you remove Tottenham's awful game week 1 performance against Everton, and obviously he went off at half time against Newcastle when he hit the woodwork twice in those 45 minutes. I mean, he's phenomenal at the moment, Heung-min Son. Are we at a point now where, did we underestimate him?
Who, Son?
Yeah.
No, we always knew that at that price it was ridiculous value.
Well, I mean, what's his level now as a player?
So let me ask you,
is he worth putting in the conversation with Sterling, Salah, Mane, etc.?
Sure. Because end product, James. This is the thing right now with players that talk about one of my own in 4 hours again, frustrated at the weekend, mainly because of end product. I don't fault his work rate. And end product is what it's about. That's what puts goals and assists on the board. The thing with Heung-min Son, when he's in front of goal, is he's deadly. So he has composure and end product, which is why he has to be. Like, look at Sterling, who had a 1-on-1 and fluffed it, and obviously frustrates managers sometimes. Son is consistent with his end product. What he does that annoys is get like dumb red cards and random reckless challenges every year or whatever. But when he plays and he's free flowing, he's as good as some of these guys for sure. Yeah.
I just wonder is he going to remain a captaincy choice for us in FPL?
So let me ask you the question now, which is the second part of the question, right? I mean, he's outscored Kane yesterday, and he's outscored Kane in a lot of game weeks. What would need to happen for you to think that Son is a better captaincy option than Harry Kane?
I think in the games after game week 8, that might be the case. Where
Extra point for every goal, point for a clean sheet if it happens. Bonus points are galore.
But then I also, and this is going to be so interesting once we hit that international break, because really, I mean, Tottenham's fixtures 9 to 15 are really bad. And a lot of people, obviously, I think you've probably got about quarter of the game now on the double up of Kane and Son.
More, 28% yesterday.
Is that right? Is it? Yeah. And that's probably going to increase going into this week as well, and even more so even in game week 8, because Spurs really are on paper the standout captaincy choice in game week 8. But as I said, 9 to 15, you don't see the captaincy options. I've spoken before about obviously these fixtures: City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Palace, Liverpool, Leicester, Wolves is obviously a really tough run. Now, you can captain these guys in, Arsenal at home, Leicester at home if you fancy them. The one that stands out as nice is Palace away. Liverpool play Fulham. So there really isn't between 9 and 15. That's a lot of potential money to be hanging about if you're going to stay on that double up and not be looking to put the armband on. Then it becomes difficult. If you, this is one of the things I'm thinking about at the moment. If I stay with both, which is a strong case to do so, even in spite of them fixtures, because A, they're performing so well. B, if one scores, the other one's probably fucking assisting them at the moment. And C, particularly in Kane's case, he's obviously capable of returning in any game at any time, right? He'll get ones. He'll just keep returning. But if I keep them both, I need to work out, and I think this is a big decision maker, how many other premium players can I fit in? Because I'm not going to want to captain Kane and Son much during that period. So if I want to put, say, let's just say, argument's sake, Salah and De Bruyne in there, it's going to crucify the rest of my team, isn't it? Particularly if I'm going to be stubborn about the likes of Trent and Robbo. Or do I get seriously brave and look at a lot of these fixtures and go, quite laughably, Brighton away, Fulham away, Palace away, West Brom at home, Newcastle away. Can I captain Trent in a lot of them fixtures?
You can. I mean, just looking at the fixtures and other players, Chelsea are away, like game week 9, Chelsea away at Newcastle. You've got a captaincy option there, which is more than potential. Dominic Calvert-Lewin is away at Fulham in game week 9, if you're brave enough. Mikel Antonio.
Fernandes got West Brom that week.
Yeah, so I think there's Rashford, other obviously cheaper options that you're comfortable to captain there. Liverpool away at Brighton is a potential captaincy option. When Palace are at home to Newcastle, would you captain a Zaha?
Stop it, Suj. Back captaining the Crystal Palace player. I don't care what points he's got.
West Ham at home to Villa on a Monday night.
Stop it.
Antonio.
Stop it. We all well and good saying these things. Like the one I thought was a real differential shout for captaincy this week was Neil Maupay, home to West Brom. And he looks like something confidence-wise in him on what I saw yesterday is not quite right with him at the moment. It's an individual case. But the idea of captaining the likes of Zaha against Newcastle or Antonio's against Villa or Grealish's against West Ham, we're not doing that.
Why not?
We're not.
Well, that's the sacrifice if you want to keep Son and Kane. Now, let me talk about game week 10 and game week 11, for example, right? City, 2 home games, Burnley and Fulham. Would you captain Phil Foden if you didn't have other coverage? Would you feel brave enough to do that?
No.
So you're really keen on captaining a premium asset? I
think most of us are, aren't we? I think at the moment we're now putting Son in the category with those above 10 million in terms of regularly. If you've got a Son preference over Kane for the next 2 game weeks is a perfect example, then I think it's absolutely fine. Personally, I'll still be going Harry Kane, I would have thought, in the 2 fixtures, personally. I just wonder if players like Pulisic... See, I'd favour that more if you look at Pulisic's upcoming fixtures. In odd way, actually, I think Chelsea will perform better against Burnley at the weekend than Tottenham did last night. Pulisic scored a hat-trick in that fixture last season as well. Pulisic would be one, because it's Chelsea and their capabilities from an attacking sense, I'd be more comfortable captaining him than going, Zaha's got an easy fixture this week.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I had no thoughts to move away from the double up in that 9 to 13, 14 period. at the moment. I'm happy to keep them. If I don't captain them, I don't captain them. So be it. But I had no plans to move away. The first 2 games in that run, you're at home to City and then you've got Chelsea. I've just seen City. Now, on the right-hand side at right back, you've either got Cancelo or Zinchenko or Mendy. Whoever you have can tear him a new one because Jared Bowen did. So if he can get in between whoever's on that side. So you're
saying captain Gareth Bale in game week 9, are you?
I'm just saying you will cause City problems because they're not as good defensively as they have been. We caused them problems and you're better going forward. Chelsea defensively, we know, are just not that good. So game week 9 and 10, I'm comfortable holding into. And then 11 and 12, maybe, yeah, then I'll look at going to a City asset for Fulham and Burnley's the week before. So, yeah, I don't know.
I think Premium City, from at least game week 10 onwards, looks like it's going to be very important. But then...
Who?
Well,
Kevin De Bruyne might come back.
De Bruyne, I think, will still be my go-to. Liverpool in game week 12, Fulham, game week 14, Palace, game week 15, West Brom, game week 16, Newcastle. So, again, is that your captaincy cover, rather? And that's what I keep referring back to Son and Kane. Because if you shift them 2 out during this period, yeah, okay, you're going to be giving up the value on these guys that have built up. But that allows you to fit in the likes of Salah and Sterling, for example. Whereas at the moment, Kane, Son, Salah and Sterling is a lot.
It's a hell of a lot. My opinion on this is it's a future Suj problem. I'll tell you why. Spurs, if you're still free-flowing, and I know we're off the back of recency bias with this difficult performance at Burnley, but last few games you have looked good going forward. If you are playing well, scoring goals at that point, then fear of missing out with Son and Kane is actually going to far outweigh the additional captaincy options elsewhere. I'm in the FOMO camp right now. So I'm going to wait and see when we get there. If you're not free-flowing anymore, I mean, there may be an injury or two here or there, then yeah, sure, I'll look at it. But right here, right now, today, during that period, FOMO is outweighing my potential upside of a different captain elsewhere.
So what's the FOMO?
Like, you guys will score a ton of goals in these games.
In the next 2, possibly?
No, I'm talking 9 onwards.
You think?
Maybe. Look, we said City and Chelsea are not good defensively.
I just think it's going to be all the rage conversation between game weeks 8 and 9. What now?
True. And if in doubt and there's no certainty about what to do, I'm going to do nothing with both of them.
And that's okay.
Do you know off the top of your head what price you bought Heung-min Son at?
I can find out. Possibly even at the start. I went to him after Manchester United, so it might have been 9-1 maybe.
Yeah, I bought him at 9-1. He's at 9-5 now.
I bought Kane at 10-6. I bought Son at 9.
Yeah, so I bought Son at 9-1. I got
him early during the international break, didn't I?
9-1 on Son, so I've had a big rise on him. Kane, I actually got a 10.8, which was a little bit late. So I'm almost easier losing the value on Kane than I am Son. Sure. But if you're talking about finding a premium asset from City or Liverpool, then those guys are all in the midfield. So
I think Son is going to be especially hard to sell.
Very hard.
Especially hard. I mean, there'll be guys out there who got on at 8.9, right? He's going to be especially hard to sell. His value, as long as he stays fit, touch wood, by the time probably you get to the West Brom game, he's going to be looking at sort of 9.6, 9.7, most likely, if not more, depending on how he performs. I mean, it's worth saying his ownership is big now, 55%. Massive.
Very, very big.
It's hurting to go without him. He's not the only one. I mean, I've suffered without Calvert-Lewin for weeks, bought him in, and now Hatrick Bamford scored more than him, right? It's unbelievable. Welcome to 2020-21. Talking of which, should we do games?
Yeah, we should run down the games. We'll give everybody our usual take on the ones that we've watched and not, and what assets, all of that kind of stuff. Starting with Friday Night Football. We had Friday Night Football for the first time, and we've got Friday Night Football again this week with Wolves Palace. But Villa Leeds.
Wolves Palace won't be like that game.
No. All I can say about Leeds is now I'm starting to believe the hype. I didn't know enough to believe or disbelieve the hype around Leeds, but now we've seen it. I've seen it in action. I can see what they can do, and we say it on the pod regularly. They'll cock up a couple of times here or there, but I honestly thought Villa would win this game because of the attacking potential they had. No Calvin Phillips was a big deal for me in this game, which could have given them some defensive coverage. Then you see Struijk, who I seem to remember was everybody's tip last week for getting in.
I put my hand up.
But you can't predict that kind of stuff. And then Leeds go and win comfortably. Bamford takes his goals very well.
Firstly on Villa, great options. We kind of highlighted on People's Poll yesterday, but last week we said 6 options. Actually, Trezeguet's numbers are not bad either, so you possibly add him as a 7th because he's quite cheap at sort of 5.4. Jack Grealish could have hauled here. He's obviously had the shot that Ayling cleared off the line. He was outstanding at centre-half, by the way, Luke Ayling, although most of the Leeds team was. And he had the effort in the second half at 0-0, which would have been goal of the season contender if he'd put it away, right? So fine margins at that stage, Villa could have been 2-0 up. However, once Leeds took lead, they were breathtaking. There's a brilliant clip. To be honest, the last 30 seconds of the game, I was speaking to you about it. You haven't seen it, have you?
Not
this
yet,
clip.
no.
So
but
they're 3-0 up, and it's literally the last 30 seconds of injury time. They win the ball on the edge of the box, and they just pile forward. 7-on-4 they had at 3-0 up. There wasn't any thought of the supporting 4 players to go, well, it's a 3v4 there, 3-0 up, let's make sure we keep the clean sheet. There was go and get the 4th.
Yeah.
Was all they was thinking. And it's brilliant. One of the things I spoke about was the idea that if Villa did win it was Harrison took a shot where it went wide at near post, it was poor. But if Villa had got a block in, no matter where it went on the edge of the box, Leeds would have won the ball back and still had the 7-on-4. Frighteningly good. The way they recover without the ball and their intent without the ball when they attack is mad. They are going to damage some teams. I'm still certain they will get caught out on the counter in certain games. And just some interesting notes on Leeds. 92 shots conceded is the second most this season, after Newcastle have conceded about 312. Not really, 102 Newcastle. Expected goals conceded for Leeds is I think it's the 4th worst after Newcastle, West Brom and Fulham all higher. Expected goals conceded is 10.04. They've conceded 9. They are going to concede goals in certain games. I'm genuinely convinced they'll have a game or two where they get beat 3-0 and probably dominate the ball and stuff, and they'll just have a bad day. But at the moment, they look great. The way they dealt with the issues they've got at centre-half, with obviously Cooper and Llorente missing, and adapting to having to take Struijk off before he was sent off. Dallas obviously went to right back. This is common when Ayling moves to centre-half. Both excellent. Alioski did quite well at left back. I think the idea is eventually Llorente and Cooper will probably be the first choice centre-halves when they're playing a back 4 against teams that play with one up front. Ayling will play right back, Dallas left back. Click's an interesting one. We spoke about him a bit yesterday on the People's Poll, because there's pluses and negatives of Phillips' absence. What we don't know at this stage, maybe Bielsa will tell us again, who's going to play that sitting midfield role ahead of the Monday night fixture against Leicester. Obviously, if it's Click, you can forget about him breaking into the box off the ball. The flip of that is he's possibly on a few more corners now with Phillips' absence, so there's positives and negatives of that. Patrick Bamford. Andy Martin, love you, mate. Leeds correspondent. He loves to send out free tips every weekend for the weekend, and one of them was sell Patrick Bamford if you still got him. He thought in his predicted lineup that Rodrigo might even play up front and Bamford would come out of the team. So do not beat yourself up about the fact you don't own Patrick Bamford. If you're one of the 25% or so that do, very, very well done.
28.3 has crept up to.
He has more FPL points than Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Just let that sink in for a minute.
Yep.
A massive shout out as well to the 2 wide players.
Andy Martin has to apologise to 1.771 million people because he was sold by that's selected by 1.7, he was sold by 71,449 net transfers out. So Andy, they all probably follow him, that's why.
And he hasn't got that many followers.
Okay,
he's got quite a few.
Yeah.
Andy,
you've got to take Bamford seriously now.
Andy won't mind because listen,
when Leeds are doing well, he's
happy.
They deserve it, man. Respect.
He's got to stay in the team now, hasn't he? That's the interesting aspect. Timing wise is brilliant. What's
timing wise,
interesting
it's
about
brilliant.
him,
Why you think their fixtures coming up look?
No,
decent?
I think timing wise, because I think Andy was onto something in the sense that Rodrigo probably was on the cusp of playing up front.
Right, so Bamford's hat-trick has now meant that
you can't take him out of the team now, can you?
No way.
His confidence is absolutely flying, right?
He scored in 4 out of the 6 games.
I mean, if you'd have looked on the timeline on Twitter at half time, the amount of people saying, Bamford's not good enough, he's missing chances, and then look at the way he's taking the goals. The first one, poacher effort, can't miss, but right place, right time. The second one's a weird one because it ends up like the knuckleball shot. I think what happened is he's tried to side foot it in, and he's caught the thing on the valve, which you can't intend to do from open play, but that's exactly what happened. And it was a slight nick off the defender, and it just flew. Martinez had no chance. And the third one he takes brilliantly, the way he manipulates his body in a tight area, although Villa have to defend that better.
So
they're going to create chances. That's the point.
Do you want to buy him?
Not particularly, no. But I can't argue that. What is he? 5'8", 5'9"?
5'9".
5'9". You can't argue it. To be honest with you, I would rather buy Che Adams at the moment. But he's playing in a side who's going to create chances for him. And he's an interesting one, Bamford, where you can become stubborn about players like this. You have a preconceived idea of, might be that I feel that way about Zaha now because of how he let me down last season, where we need to look beyond it and go, he's a good asset now. A little bit like I changed my opinion on Spurs assets, right? I couldn't let what I'd seen in game weeks 2, 3 and 4 pass me by and not get any of them in. Bamford offers great value, and it'd be interesting now. Calvin has had one blank. The people think, I can find 2 million off that move.
It's a lot of money to find.
Well, no, it wouldn't be 2 million once you sell him, but 1.6 or whatever. Yeah.
I'm in the bracket here where I'm looking at Che Adams' fixtures. So Che Adams is 0.1 cheaper at 5.8 versus 5.9. 1.8% ownership versus 28% ownership. So clearly a differential. But looking at these fixtures, okay, Villa away, but then Newcastle at home, Newcastle Wolves, Man United, Brighton, Sheffield United, Arsenal, City. Even the teams that they've got to play that would be green or grey fixtures in the Newcastle, Brighton, Sheffield United defensively aren't too bad. Brighton, for example, keep the ball. They are defensively a bit bad. Wolves, I think Bamford would be the one that I would go to. If I found out that Antonio was injured and wasn't going to play for 4 weeks, then downgrading to Bamford might be what the move that I would make, and then use that money elsewhere.
Just to compare the two briefly, Bamford 23 shots so far this season, 11 on target, XG of 3.3 goals, has obviously got 6. Che Adams 13 shots on goal, 8 on target, XG 2.86. So Bamford certainly outdoes him on the numbers, although worth saying as well that Adams does outperform Bamford on XA. I think for me it would just be a case of thinking that where before I always thought Ings over Adams, we probably shouldn't talk about it till we get to the game. I'm now thinking that the difference between Adams and Ings, which is 2.7 million or something,
not worth it.
Possibly worth going Adams now. Now he's got his confidence. You can see it's one fortunate goal against Chelsea and it changes for him. Yep. Although he still hesitated on the shot against Everton, but he's creating at the moment. His XG is basically the same as Ings, and his XA is outperforming Ings, I believe.
Yep. Villa have got a sustained good run anyway. They're only playing one of the top 6 until Christmas, and that's Arsenal away. If you're owning Villa assets, you just kind of take it on the chin and move on from it. Right? Yeah,
I think so. Like I said, to be honest, if they'd have gone in front here, this could have been very, very different. I have to shout out the 2 wide players for Leeds as well. We spoke about both a little bit yesterday. Jack Harrison at 5.5, really good. 1.9% owned. There's a decent differential for you. I feel with Leeds, my instinct on this is becoming, don't worry about the fixtures. That's what I'm beginning to feel about them. So for me, I'll give you an example. I've got Ayling, Walker-Peters, Taylor. If I think Walker-Peters or Taylor's got an outstanding fixture at the moment, I would probably play them. Whereas if a little bit like this week, I'm looking at all 3, including Ayling, and thinking none of them are great, I'm playing Ayling. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm at with it now.
West Ham 1, City 1 was the early kickoff on Saturday. In many ways, a game with 2 halves. But West Ham continued from the Spurs performance and played well in the first half, caused trouble for City, especially Bowen against Garcia and Cancelo on that right-hand side. Antonio was causing them problems drifting out to the left. So a good performance in the first half. Antonio, I mean, how he keeps falling in price, I have no idea.
He's got an injury now, so that's not going to change.
Yeah, I mean, 3.9% ownership at the time of recording is nothing, considering he scored 3 in the first 6, and after Liverpool, we've got a great run all the way through up until the end of January. You could hold on to him.
With Liverpool this week, he's likely to drop to 6.2, Antonio. At the time of recording, we don't know if he's out or not. We suspect that it's probably going to return as bad news. Now, a lot of people, myself included, Suj already owns, obviously, been strongly earmarking this game week 8 fixture against Fulham and looking to move. So, if you've got Antonio in your thoughts, it's a good week to be calming down with transfers, which, to be honest, with European fixtures, we should be a little bit calmer with making early moves at the moment as well, in any case. But it would be a massive blow for you if he misses out, wouldn't he, Suj?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Changes the dynamic of you a lot.
A lot. So let's wait and see what happens on the injury news. City in the second half, when Foden came on, were much better. Their movement was good. They held the ball well, and they did cause us a lot of problems. By the end of the game, we were really hanging on to their life, and they could have scored and should have won. But ultimately, in games of football, you put the effort in. Sometimes you get these points, and I think we deserve the point for effort, if not necessarily for quality. Something's not right at City.
Yeah, I think.
Having said that, let me add that when Foden came on, and then De Bruyne was pulling the strings and doing De Bruyne stuff, picking the ball up, finding space, threading it through, and being a quarterback, if you will, like dictating the pace of the game. So De Bruyne comes back in and plays in a similar vein to what he did in the last 20 minutes or so. Sure, I think City can get back to some kind of form, but they're not like the go-to team.
No, they've had 9 big chances in 5 games.
Nothing.
Which is 5 less than Villa in the same amount of games, which I know people are going to say, yeah, the Liverpool game, etc. I get that. But it's not what you'd expect from them, is it?
Not at all.
They're not big numbers. I mean, to give you context to what I'm saying there, with Manchester City's 9 big chances in 5 games, Liverpool have had 23 in 6. And I think the big problem here is, look, De Bruyne's obviously been a miss over the last couple. It's the centre-forward position.
Yeah.
And I wonder if this is going to come back and bite Guardiola, that he's not bought someone in that position. Because this keeps happening with Aguero. It's been happening for years, unfortunately. It's quite sad. I think he was leaning into a position, Aguero, where he was kind of beginning to play the game in the way people are now saying about Kane, about dropping into holes and people running in behind, which when you've got people like Sterling is great. Would have been better if they had Leroy Sané, by the way, as well.
Yeah.
Jesus does that role similarly as well. He's a good footballer. You never feel like he's going to go mad in front of goal, though. So that's an issue. For whatever reason, the fact that they're not having big chances, though, has also got something to do in terms of the providing of quality behind it as well. You are right. Something is just missing at the moment, whether it be in, I don't know, Mahrez not performing well enough. Sterling should have won the game for them at the end, to be honest. You can argue whether it had been merited or not, but I mean, such a bad touch when he runs through.
Yep.
Bernardo Silva, I think for me, they should get in the team. They looked far more energised when Foden come on. For me, it seems very straightforward for City to go to a 4-1-4-1. It seems really straightforward and literally go and like suffocate teams from an attacking sense. But I feel Guardiola can't shake the idea that he's so unhappy defensively at the moment. And so, perversely, it might be that actually Laporte coming in is what changes it for them in an attacking sense.
Yeah,
a little bit more trust.
The mentality is
a
suddenly,
little bit,
you know what, it's
possibly.
all right, Laporte is there.
Because my reaction when I saw the team on Saturday, when I saw Garcia was playing, was, oh, West Ham have got a big chance here with Antonio.
Of course.
And admittedly, as we discussed on Tottenham earlier today, actually Antonio ended up going to Diaz's side quite a lot.
Yep.
But it was still a test,
but it created space for Bowen.
Let's say makeshift defence at the moment for City. So it might be that to fix the issues offensively, they need to get some stability defensively. There's obviously a different makeup to the way they played against Arsenal. We knew Kyle Walker's position in that game was something specifically targeted for Aubameyang. City's next three: Sheffield United, Liverpool, Tottenham. If it goes badly for them, they could be out of the race.
Agreed.
I don't think it will, but I think there's that risk for them, like there was this time last year, where suddenly you become adrift. Because it's all well and good saying, oh yeah, Liverpool look like they're going to slip up this year. Liverpool have had a difficult run of fixtures, in my opinion. Have 13 points from 18, which is just shy of what you'd want for title winning form. Certainly on the standards of what those two clubs have obviously set over the last 3 years or so. It's just slightly off. But 13 points out of 18, if you do that over a whole season, to be honest, this season, that might be enough to win a league.
Yep.
City are 5 points behind, admittedly game in hand, but they don't want to be getting in a position where suddenly it becomes 10 points and a game in hand, do they?
No.
Against this Liverpool. Whatever you think of them at the moment, City know they don't want to fall adrift and fall behind. Sheffield United is not going to be an easy game at the weekend.
No.
There were certain improvements from Sheffield United at the weekend. And the one thing you know with them is, defensively, generally speaking, you can trust them, right? It won't be an easy game. De Bruyne coming back is massive, and he would still be the go-to for me for City. He's down to 15% owned. He's going to drop to 11.4 million most likely. That makes me want to pull the trigger immediately on him, because I know that any place, any time, even in the Liverpool-Tottenham games. But because of what's happening in the centre-forward position, I don't think I'm going to rush.
No.
At the moment. I think the solution in the short term for them that they might land on is Foden as a false nine.
I think he did the role very well.
I'm not saying that makes Foden... Foden, he basically played off the left, and they kind of interchanged who played that role. And they would again if for example, Foden picked up that role. I don't think Foden playing that role would make him a better asset. It's not one where you suddenly going, oh, he's 6.6 million, he's playing out of position up front. I don't think it adds to his appeal. It's the same as when Sterling plays through the middle. I don't feel it adds to his appeal. I prefer Raheem Sterling when he's going and running at people. Mm-hmm. It's not quite right at the moment. They need to be careful, or it could get beyond them.
Certainly could. Let's talk about Fulham and Crystal Palace. 1-2. So 2-1 to Palace. Zaha with a goal and assist. We talked about him lingering in my side for a while now. Maximum bonus points. I'm comfortable with that. He's had a price rise again yesterday. It wasn't all Palace's way, but they did have a hell of a lot of chances and shots on goal, and comfortably won on the stats.
Oh yeah, listen, we got on extremes. Palace had one shot on target in Gameweek 5, being that Wilfried Zaha penalty against Brighton. And this week they had the most
10?
Shots on target with 10.
Yeah,
which
mad.
That's potentially quite low for a highest total from a game week, by the way. XG 2.96, the highest of any side. Worth saying as well to throw into that, Wilf Zaha's stats specifically from the weekend. Big, right? Really, really big. It was over 1, I know that, for XG and XA. He obviously had the header he missed. He scored from a couple of yards. That's going to make his XG extremely high as well. He's had the assist. It was originally his shot that was blocked in the build-up to that as well. Palace, what's interesting about this is, and it's a repetitive theme in Fulham games, we're having a lot of the ball. And I think Palace played off this. Essentially, I spoke to you about this off camera yesterday. Fulham's midfielders can play. And actually in Lamina and Guisa, it's not the worst in terms of protection. Lookman, I really like as an option. If you want a 1 week punt this week, I wouldn't put your Fademola Lookman at all at 5 million against West Brom. I don't want to see Loftus-Cheek playing on the right. The problem is Fulham's issue is at the core, a centre-half, unfortunately. Obviously brought Johansson in from Lyon, who got a bad injury, would have gone straight into the team. So now they're dealing with Tim Ream still playing every week. And I'm afraid, although it's a big improvement on Dennis Odoi, it's not a big enough improvement. And they're going to concede a lot of goals through the middle of their pitch. The Riedewald goal was really identical in certain ways to the Jack Grealish goal that Villa scored against them. A running in beyond. They don't see runners coming. So it might be that in games coming up, interestingly for Fulham, that runners from midfield might perform particularly well. I presume for you, Suj, Zaha is hanging about for a long time now.
Yeah, I've got no reason to sell him.
Good run of fixtures.
I've got no reason to sell him whatsoever. Game week 12, we might reassess, but for now, he's sticking around. Tyrick Mitchell sitting there, he's going to stick around. I've got no reason to move him on. He's second, third substitute most weeks anyway. So yeah, I'm completely comfortable with that. No one from Fulham's on an FPL radar whatsoever, mate.
Oh, Lookman is.
Yeah, maybe, but I only if you're trying, if he's a solution to a problem, he's not like the transfer I want to make. But if say Souček was injured and out for a while, and I didn't want to upgrade to a 6 or 6.5 million, then he solves my problem at that price point. But I'm not actively going out to look for him. Had I been wildcarding, might be different, but I'm not.
-4 of Pereira to Lookman can get me Bale to De Bruyne.
Yeah.
I'm going to think about that.
And then suddenly gives you a really good, interesting option.
Because, I mean, just to go back on that very briefly, it's the idea of getting him at that low ownership really appeals to me on Kevin De Bruyne, because it won't take much for it to go back up and stuff. Yeah, Lookman's a great shout, right? I mean, he's hit the woodwork twice. We spoke about him this time last week after the Sheffield United game. Another good fixture to come. Admittedly, it then gets really choppy and rough for them. And then I think you need to make week-to-week decisions whether you would start him or not. For a lot of people, 5 million will be too much money for a player that they won't want to start based on the fixtures. But he's a good player. I wouldn't rule him out at all. I wish going into this weekend I had Lookman rather than Pereira, although Pereira looked much better in the second half yesterday when he was allowed to float. Van Aanholt versus Mitchell. What's your thoughts, Suj?
But it's two completely different players at different price points. So what? I don't know the question.
Do you not know who's going to play?
For me, Tyrick Mitchell was 4 million.
Because I can't get through a day without someone asking me. I wanted to
find a 4 million defender that I thought would play, even if it was short term and covered me off for 4 or 5 weeks. And I took Mitchell, and that was that. He hasn't got into my starting 11 on the pitch in 6 game weeks so far. So who cares?
At least that hasn't cost you the last 2 with them late goals.
Whereas Van Aanholt, if I owned him, would be playing week in, week out. So they're two completely different things. So if you own Tyrick Mitchell, I'd be interested to know of all the owners that he does have, and he has a number because of his price, how many have actually scored any points off him? Or how many have just had him on the bench week in, week out? So don't worry about it. If you really, 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 really are burning a transfer this week and you've got nothing else to do, and you really think, okay, you know what, I can go from Mitchell to Kilman, for example, who's been playing,
that's what
then
it
go
is.
For it. But if you're not, then don't worry about it.
The idea that's getting people is, let's say you've bought, there's obviously been a number of listeners who had Mitchell from before game week 1, right? Got a 4.0, he's now 4.2, you sell him, you make, before he comes out the team, you get the 0.1 profit, you spend that money on Kilman solidifies his place in the Wolves team, and you've got an unbelievable asset that we would all want if he stayed in the Wolves team. Yeah. That's what people are thinking. I don't know if Kilman's going to stay in the team either.
He'll be second or third sub on your bench most weeks.
I think the answer at the moment with Mitchell, as long as you've got other cover, is to hold.
Stick.
Wait.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
An interesting side aspect on PVA is his contract is actually up at the end of this season. And I don't know if talks are ongoing in terms of renewing or not at the moment. So is it even the given that he comes back in? The other interesting thing, and I don't think there's anything to read on this, is obviously when Van Aanholt did come on at the weekend, Mitchell went and played at right back. I would suggest that's more the fact that Nathaniel Klein came into the team, and he's obviously very short of fitness. Mm-hmm. That's what I would read into that. Mitchell playing at right back is not something that will happen on a regular. I don't know what the issue was on Joel Ward. I've not seen anything, to be honest. And to be honest, if he was fit, he's the one that would still interest me the most. I wouldn't worry about Klein taking his place as long as he's fit, unless something's happened. It's 4.5 million, Joel Ward. Decent run of fixtures for Palace coming up. I mean, Wolves, Leeds, Burnley, Newcastle next 4.
Manchester United 0, Chelsea 0. This pre-season friendly was a bit of a drab affair. It was a very cagey match.
It was.
There were things that I enjoyed about the game. I thought.
What, the end?
I thought Reece James always looked a threat. As an owner, I like he's one of those players that you enjoy owning. I think if Chelsea stick with 3 at the back, he'll definitely.
I think most people aren't enjoying, because every week they're having that decision to make.
I've made peace with the decision that I'm playing him week in, week out, and if he doesn't and he gets me a 1 pointer, so be it. But I think he's got the capability and he'll get the consistency. He is now 14-1-1-0, and he didn't get any minutes in the Palace game. 1-8. So in the 4 games that he's played all 90 minutes, he's got 14, 1-1 and 8. So he's returned every other game when he's got the 90 minutes. I'm comfortable with him, and that's not like small returns, it's decent returns. I'm comfortable with him.
I'm about to lose value on Charlie Taylor. And I think Burnley are improving, as we'll discuss a little bit later. But Charlie Taylor's likely to lose value, go to 4.4 at some point very soon. I got 0.6 in the bank. I could go to Reece James, 1 free transfer, 3 good fixtures coming up for Chelsea. Would you consider that?
Yeah. Reece James is my first choice. So I've got Trent and Robbo, then Reece James, then Stuart Dallas.
I would still have,
on
top of that, I would still have Ayling and Walker-Peters in reserve.
Yeah.
So actually, when in my circumstance, rather than say
too strong,
perhaps people are sitting, to be honest, whereas others perhaps sitting there with the likes of Mitchell and Kilman and thinking, well, I don't know if them two are going to play, and then you've got Reece James as well, and you've got 3 players you don't know are going to play, for example.
Then you've got, as well as Reece James, Mendy. I thought his performance was decent in goal. He made a few good
It's a
saves.
fucking improvement on what they got, aren't they?
Completely. And some you may say were regulation. The one he saved with his feet, I thought was a little ropey, but it was better than what they've had for sure. I think his performance
the save
good.
from Rashford in the first half was interesting. Could give Rashford too much of the goal.
Yeah.
But I wonder if it's just his style, because he's very big, isn't he? He's 6'6" or something.
He's got incredible
He's
span.
got a good reach, and obviously if he's capable of saving with his feet as well, he probably feels a bit more comfortable shut off the near post.
I wasn't convinced by that save, but it was a save nonetheless.
The save at the end from Rashford,
better.
Kepa ain't saving, or Caballero are not saving.
Correct.
That. And actually, it was a very good save, but because of the size of him, it almost became routine for him.
Yeah, I think
once
you
he's
do
moved
get
his feet quickly,
goalkeepers make regulation saves that look a little bit Hollywood. So I think those saves could have fallen into that bracket a little bit. But regardless, let's not be critical. It's an improvement. They've got a decent goalkeeper from that performance there. You then have, when I saw the Manchester United lineup, I thought they would struggle to give Chelsea a lot of attacking problems with Daniel James and what have you. But I thought that gave Chelsea then the opportunity to go at the game and take it by the scruff of the neck, and they didn't. And that was the disappointment.
What happened in the game was both sides were petrified of the other.
Yeah.
I think Frank Lampard played the 3 at the back on the assumption that United were going to play 3 at the back. And I think he thought, you know what, man-to-man will have them. Then obviously with the fact that whatever you say about Daniel James, he's rapid, right? You don't want to let him get away on the counter. And this was how Chelsea lost that game last season on the opening day. We know that. But what ended up happening, I actually like Chelsea in that system because, I mean, the number one thing for me is you can get Pulisic and Havertz into central areas close to Werner. And Chilwell and Reece James are absolutely perfect for wing back. And it also allows them to play as Palaqueta.
Correct.
So it solves... the 3 at the back would kill the problem from the rotation perspective. Do I think they'll play that way away to Burnley at the weekend? Probably not. I think it goes back to being a back 4. With James and Chilwell, just to sum up on that, and other players, so Reguilon at Tottenham might be one that people worried about at the moment, who I do definitely expect to come back in, by the way. Because the European games are every single week at the moment, this problem on rotation is not going to go away till around about game week 13, 14. It's not going away. You're going to have it every week. So I think like your stance on Reece James of just, right, I'll play him. It is what it is. If he comes on and gets a 1-pointer, fine. So be it. I think that's the right thing to do. Because if you're sitting there worried about it, you're still going to be worried about it next week.
Yep.
That's the point. On what happened in the game for United, the McTominay and Fred partnership solves the problem of people getting at the back 4, which I spoke about a lot, both before and after the Tottenham game. It solved that problem. It also allows the 2 fullbacks to get a bit higher, where obviously without the protection, they were getting high and just getting exposed, right? Or playing too deep. so they couldn't use the flanks in wide areas in possession. Also protects Fernandes, who I saw Jamie Carragher was obviously very critical of Pogba last night in terms of his position, etc. Fernandes does nothing for that team without the ball from a defensive aspect. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you do want him to, but Pogba's not the only one that should be getting the criticism there. This is why we have a dearth of number 10s, is because they have to be defensive in their work now. And Bruno Fernandes doesn't offer anything without the ball. Part of that is you obviously want him in creative spaces when he receives a thing. He goes deep, but he doesn't do anything to influence the game. I've never seen him chase after anyone.
Yep.
And that's in an area where they're very weak in terms of getting legs around the pitch. That's why McTominay and Fred are playing at the moment. And probably with Arsenal this weekend, they probably go and play that way again. What will be interesting is what happens next once Solskjaer realises that under this system and the way they're playing, he can't get Pogba in the team. He can't get Van der Beek in the team. He's got a decision to make over Cavani, Martial, Greenwood. Mata played alright against Newcastle. I actually thought he played alright at the weekend as well, although he's not the long-term solution for United. But coming inside allows Wan-Bissaka to go forward.
He's a very tidy, reliable footballer. I've always loved Mata, even when he was at Chelsea.
He gives them control. He's a good footballer. He doesn't really give the thing away. He's an intelligent player. He just doesn't have the legs that he had from the Chelsea 2012 team, for example. United look weak. That's the thing. Putting McTominay and Fred makes them better defensively, but it just makes them weaker.
Offensively.
They need to find the balance of what was working really well for them at the start of that restart period. Was it just the case that they managed to use pace so well and now people have read it? Because it's easy to forget, not only were Martial, Rashford, Fernandes, Greenwood on fire, and it was like, I've got to have at least 2 of them, if not 3 of them. They weren't conceding goals during that period either. So is it a case, reflecting on it, that teams were unfit, and again during that period we saw teams just sit off deep when they lost the ball, right? Whereas now people are starting to get into United's face. Think of Kane's first goal at Manchester United, where Tottenham went and attacked him off the goal kick. United are now being pressured, and their players defensively aren't good enough under pressure. The 2 extra bodies of McTominay and Fred give them legs and protection, and I think it will continue, but it's to the detriment of them offensively.
Yep.
Chelsea, I still think should have played Mason Mount for just about anybody else, because I think they missed his energy in that particular fixture. But I do like that system, but I don't think they'll stay with it in the next couple of games. Lampard's tended to use it against Big Six teams.
To counteract. Talking of Big Six teams, Liverpool 2, Sheffield United 1. It was one of those where the boxer comes out of the corner early doors swinging and giving a good go, and eventually the bigger, stronger heavyweight just whacks him one after a little while and knocks him down. Credit to Sheffield United for improving, giving themselves a shout, getting themselves involved in the game, because even after the penalty they had a couple of opportunities and they were trying to create, but eventually you could tell that Liverpool were able to pick them off and create more, and better quality did tell. And the delivery from Trent, that free kick that he hit that Ramsdale had to tip over, would have been one of the goals of the season. Salah had it in the back of the net, albeit offside. Yeah, I just think in the end Liverpool were going to win that game through sheer will and quality, but I think Sheffield United should take a lot of heart from it. And doesn't help me as a Ramsdale owner, mind. He hasn't got me a single return all year so far.
No. There is a defensive asset that I do want to highlight, though, for Sheffield United, which is obviously Ethan Ampadu, played as a holding midfielder, and I thought he acquitted himself very well. He's a good footballer anyway. He's on the verge, potentially, of dropping to 4.4. Now, you wouldn't be buying him this week with Man City at home, or probably even the week after away to Chelsea, but then there's more interesting fixtures, West Ham at home, West Brom away. He's one to kind of keep on your watch list, I think, at the moment. So it will swing back for Sheffield United.
He's got 0.6% ownership. It's like you need about 10 people to sell this guy, and his
price will
drop, man. It's crazy.
I like Ender Stevens at left-sided centre-half because I just feel that's the solution that's best for them to replace what Jack O'Connell does. One problem that they'll have to the detriment of this is They're not dealing with aerial balls into the box in the same way. Now, obviously, that's where these 2 goals come from. If you were a Sheffield United fan and you said you're going to lose 2-1 to Liverpool before the game, you'd go, all right. If I said to a Sheffield United fan you're going to lose to 2 crosses, they'd be annoyed. They'd be annoyed. Certain things not right there, and I think it's the missing of O'Connell's presence.
Yeah.
But better for them. On Liverpool, obviously change the system for them as well. And I think that it's probably compliment to Sheffield United that they played that way. I think that's why they did. I don't think this was a case of trying to fit Jota into the team. I think it's a case of knowing that with Sheffield United, danger is in wide areas. They're not going to overload you through central areas. Liverpool could afford to play a 2 in there. And Henderson and Wijnaldum just sat a bit deeper than usual, knowing that Liverpool, in theory, had an extra attacker starting on the pitch. I do think if they stayed with that system, that would be really bad from an attacking perspective for Robertson and Trent. Another reason why I don't think they'll go that way is I think against other teams, they would be concerned about the protections centrally. Think of what Villa did to them. I mean, Wijnaldum and Keita and Fabinho in that game might as well have not been on the pitch. So the idea that to put more pressure on them by using one less in the central midfield area doesn't make sense. I think this was something specific for that game. So people are thinking, oh, I suddenly want to get Jota in. That wouldn't be in my thinking. But he's obviously going to get minutes. Again, Liverpool have Champions League games, although it's Midtjylland for them this week. So I think they'll rotate a little bit for that one. Trent and Robertson.
You took the 2 names out of my mouth, James.
Oh, I knew it was coming. I'm same position I was last week, yeah?
Same position I was last week for now.
It's just nowhere near the biggest fire I've got.
I'm lying. I'm not the same position as I was last week. I'm probably a bit closer to losing 1. Trent's obviously had a drop off in price now. He's down to 7.4. I don't know which I would sell. So at the moment I may sell neither. I really want to buy Vladimir Coufal.
That's your transfer, Trent to Coufal.
Maybe Robertson to Coufal, but remember, it frees me up a lot.
How many
money.
Sous can you get in your team?
Good question. So maybe I'm like you said though. It's not the biggest fire in my team right now. Trent could have hauled comfortably. It was his cross that Salah put in. It was his shot that Ramsdale had to tip over.
Shot clearance.
Free kick.
Good clearance, wasn't it?
It was something else.
If anyone's capable, it's someone like him.
Yeah. So,
on a different day, it's an 18-pointer.
Yeah.
It's generally straight 3 instances in the game, which if they go differently is an 18-pointer for Trent. Do I think that sort of haul is coming for him at the moment? Genuinely, no, I don't. But for someone like me, on a longer term strategy, and also knowing that the fixtures get a lot better for them after the Manchester City fixture in game week 8, I'm good, you know. I'm good. Even fixtures that they've got like Leicester, Wolves, they feel like potential clean sheet games for Liverpool to me. So it's that having the 2 of them. The biggest issue with the 2 of them, it's not that I want to get rid of either of them, but if I moved on, it would go back to what I said about Spurs' problem. How do I get in, say, a De Bruyne and Salah, or De Bruyne and Fernandes, and keep Son, Kane, and keep those 2 Liverpool defensive guys? That becomes heavy, right? So that if they come out, it would be because I need the captaincy cover, and I feel I can't sell Kane or Son. Yeah. That's what would change it for me. I don't think it will.
I don't think they'll keep a clean sheet this week either. I think we're going to score against them. I think if Antonio is fit and he decides he's going to target the channel between Trent and whoever plays right-sided centre-half, I think we could have some joy there. So I'm going into this week not expecting clean sheet points from these 2. I'm actually going into this week thinking that West Ham need to become the first team to win at Anfield in like 300 years. We need to go for it this week.
I think the only way you score at Anfield at the weekend is if it's a set piece, which you're well capable of doing,
wow,
by the way.
I disagree, but we shall see after the game. 5 more games to get through, James, and we've nearly been chatting for an hour.
Do you know, I was going to say, do you want to have a side bet? It just made me realise, because I keep forgetting every week, and I told the patrons even remind me this week.
To do what? My winnings from last season.
I'm going to forget, right? So for the benefit of those on YouTube,
yeah, it's
done. 50 squid. There you go.
And I've got
Suck
an
on
18. I've got an 18-point lead so far this season as well, so we can double it.
Suj has just ordered pizza as well, which is handy.
The whole office, they deserve it. Let's talk about these last 5 games and rattle through them, so that this is not a 3-hour podcast. Although that's something else we're trying to nick from Joe Rogan, because his pods are all like 3 hours. It's another level.
Listen, fuck Joe Rogan. I've got Joe Roden now, mate.
True. Southampton 2, Everton 0. I feel like the stuff that's happened with Everton in the week, in terms of Richarlison's red card, and then is he playing, is he not, with Rodriguez and stuff, and Ancelotti, ended up becoming a little bit, not, it's harsh to say a little bit of a circus, but I don't know if it necessarily helps.
A sideshow away from the good things that Everton have been doing.
Yeah,
I know what you're saying.
a little bit. And then obviously Southampton, we know under Hasenhüttl, when they play a high intensity game, will give anybody trouble. And they did in the end, and I feel like an idiot for selling Danny Ings. And the reason I sold Danny Ings, obviously I wanted to get Kane in as a long-term strategy, but I hadn't lost any money on Ings. He was the same price as when I bought him at 8.5, so I thought it's cool. I'm not losing any value here. I can move him on. But I mean, 41 points so far, 4 goals, 2 assists, 6 games.
There's so many
He's
good
made a
forwards.
class, isn't he?
There's so many good forwards doing good bits. It's why I get put off at the moment a little bit when I see Brewster in people's teams. Not that he's 4.5 forward, you can't knock it if it gives you more power in midfield, etc. I get it completely. But I just feel like so many good forwards. And this time next week, we'll be sitting here and we'll be talking about different ones again. It'll be like, oh my God, right, I have to get Che Adams this week. Or Ollie Watkins is back into form. Or Mitrovic has finally converted some unbelievable expected goal numbers, by the way, but you just never feel like he will. We didn't even speak about him, and his numbers are one of the best in the league at the moment, Mitrovic. And
apart from the column that's goals.
Oddly enough, it was this time 2 years ago as well when he was scoring a fair bit.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about Everton too much because at Spirit_Blues coming on Clash of Correspondence on Thursday with previewing Newcastle Everton the weekend. But what I will say is, and I mentioned this probably before the international break, at some point around it in the early games anyway, was the way they've improved the team, excellent. Those 3 signings, Decore, Allen, James, brilliant. But start taking components out of that team and the drop-off is alarming. Iwobi, not good enough. Bernard, not good enough. Sigurdsson, flattering to deceive. Fabian Delph, come on, move on. Obviously hampered by not playing with a right back at the moment, with Ben Godfrey covering there. We thought John Joe Kenny would probably be available. He might be available this coming week. That would be beneficial to them. It's not a slight on Godfrey, he's a centre-half. James obviously struggled through the end of the game after the Luka Dean red card. By the way, did you think it was a red card?
Of course.
Most people don't.
It was accidental.
I think it was accidental, but I think it's a red card.
But it was a red card. You can't stamp down on someone like that.
I can't see how they get it.
You can't stamp down on someone like that.
It's completely accidental. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah, it was in his natural running stride.
But unfortunately,
and ended up landing on his ankle.
They won't get it overturned. It will be classed as endangering an opponent.
Looked horrible.
I don't think he meant it. The reason you could tell, the fact that he slid with him for so long was because he was running stride and trying to avoid him.
Couldn't break stride.
Once he's landed on him, his left foot's going. He lifts the ground to take the next stride.
Yeah. And
Cole Walker Peters obviously can't lift his foot, and that's why he ends up sliding on him. It's incredibly unfortunate. They won't get it overturned, unfortunately. James, I guess, is going to be a doubt. Actually, all the way to the weekend, you're going to have this same problem again.
Well, I don't own him in FPL, so who cares?
Neither do I. I don't particularly care either. Interesting, just to pull on, to go back to Danny Ings. On the differential show on Friday, we both predicted Southampton to win. Admittedly, that was thinking that Rodriguez was possibly out at the time. Yeah,
with Richarlison and Rodriguez both out, I didn't think they'd have the attacking threat. And look, they didn't score.
But you still sold Danny Ings.
Yeah. Yeah, longer term strategy, isn't it, Harry Kane? So
I get that because I bought Calvert-Lewin not expecting him to return this weekend, thinking that James would be out. And I mentioned on the pod last week about Southampton not conceding goals from crosses, and they dealt with them very well as and when they came up. Southampton were deserving winners. Vestergaard and Bednarek are playing well at the moment, actually. Vestergaard, he almost looks like a footballer, generally.
So
Really impressed with Romeo, not an FPL asset.
Southampton
So
have kept.
good.
We're talking defensively. I've got a goalkeeper problem in Ramsdale, who's dropped to 4.9. I'd
Yep.
like to downscale to a 4.5. There's a few around in Meslier, but Meslier rules himself out because I already own Dallas.
Why does it rule you out?
I
Why
don't
can't
want
you
to
have
double up. I'm not keen on the double up. I'll be honest with
why
you.
can't you? There's only Newcastle conceding more shots.
True. McCarthy, on the other hand, has kept 3 clean sheets in his last 4.
Yeah.
Is there anything defensively from Southampton that we can take from that? I know we had that West Brom and...
Yes, Southampton are going to keep clean sheets against teams that can't cause them a threat in behind. And we spoke about it last week. Biggest one, Richarlison is going to be the biggest threat. What's Southampton got next?
Villa.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Clean sheet.
Possibly.
Yeah, Grealish doesn't really get in behind. He kind of dribbles past. He's
Possibly.
a dribbler.
Well, I mean, Watkins runs
Newcastle,
into channels well, but it's not...
Wolves.
It's not
None
that,
of these teams get
it's
in
not
behind.
that devastating threat like a Son or a Werner. They actually defend the penalty area quite well. It's the other stuff where they open themselves up in open play situations. I spoke last week about pressure on the ball being a massive problem between Romeo and Ward-Prowse. What they're better off doing is what this ended up happening actually once they had domination of the game. Romeo sits in front and holds hands with the back 4 and let Ward-Prowse go and do the pressing thing and just give him that protection, because what that stops there with Romeo playing a little bit deeper, it stops the game week 2 problem with Harry Kane picking up those spots in between. Then you might be putting pressure on the ball in a deeper position, but you're still able to put pressure on the ball. You're not getting people picking up, which Burnley didn't allow last night, with space in between back 4 and midfield 4. They're very quietly, what are they, 6th or something? Having taken a couple of hidings.
Yep.
I'm not allowed to predict that they'll finish top half because, as Spirit Blues correctly pointed out to me on Twitter last week, I predict
Planet FPL.
Well, no, I've predicted after league to finish top 10. I'm now removing Brighton. That's one I'm going to remove from my top 10 prediction on what I saw last night.
What about Wolves and Newcastle then? Because Wolves won, Newcastle won. Wolves top half of the table.
Probably.
I mean, had they kept a clean sheet, that would have been 3 in a row and 3 victories in a row as well. 3 1-0s in a row.
You do expect Wolves to keep clean sheets in these sort of games. I mean, Patricio has to take a huge amount of blame on the goal.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like a long-range penalty. Go on, put it there. It's just set up the ball completely wrong. I don't know why that is. Players should sense that on the pitch as well. Whoever's on the end of the ball, it's easy to blame the goalkeeper like I just have, but whoever's on the end of the ball as well should have a sense of feeling, is this right? Is this right if the ball goes to a certain angle, for example? They just frustrate the life out of you, Wolves. I tweeted at half-time and said, like, the Wolves fans feel like they should just turn up at half-time for games. We discussed this as a trend back in February when Wolves beat Tottenham at White Hart Lane 3-2. And we discussed then about the impact of how much they improve in the second half of games. Everybody knows it now. I don't get this continually leaving Traore out the team to have like this impact in the second half of games when teams are naturally going to get deeper. Yeah, sure, they're more tired for him to run at them, but he's got less chance of actually running past people in a deeper position. Jimenez actually had quite a few efforts at the weekend. I think he had 6 or so. But Wolves' concern is XG so far this season, 5.72. The other 5 teams in the bottom 6, Sheffield United, Fulham, Newcastle, Burnley, Watford, for expected goals scored. You're putting Wolves in that category on expected goals scored. By the way, Arsenal are only just above that. We'll get onto them in a minute. So, I just, for those who've got like Podence, I've got Jimenez, it just feels like easy sell following this Palace fixture.
Yep.
And because it's Palace, and you know they can be stubborn, right? That it might even just be sell now.
Jimenez is now into this kind of territory. The thing with Jimenez, he very rarely gets assists, right? It's not really his game. He gets on the end of stuff.
He rarely score more than 1 goal in a game.
No, exactly. I mean, last season, 7 assists in the whole season. Whereas you've got strikers now that are multifaceted. Danny Ings is with a partner up top with Che Adams, his goals and assists, and plenty of them. Even Callum Wilson on the opposite end of the pitch there yesterday picked up, okay, it's an assist for winning a free kick, but he's got goals and assists in his locker. I don't think I'll be going to Raul Jimenez this season because I reckon there's other options in and around that are capable of matching him.
It's really frustrating watching an attacking player play in their team and in their system. And it could be that it's overemphasised at the moment because they've obviously changed a lot of the team defensively with Doherty leaving, Johnny's injury, for example, Saiss playing out of position. They've bought new players. I don't know what the reason is. And Bradley Parker's on next Thursday's clash to correspondence with Aaron Lager before they play Leicester. I don't know what the reason is that Dendoncker is now first choice and Moutinho and Neves, for whatever reason, can't play together anymore. It's been a massive strength for them. I don't know why that's changed. The one thing Dendoncker has that the others don't is he's more of a box-to-box player, right? Yep. He gets in and out the box. But it wasn't a problem from last year. I'm not sure why it's become a problem now.
Yeah.
Something's not right.
Talking about something not right.
They're still extremely good defensively. If you've got their defensive assets,
you stick with them.
Hey, great.
Yeah. Arsenal 0, Leicester 1. We'll talk Newcastle on Thursday, by the way. Yeah. Shout out to Adam, our Arsenal correspondent. I had a quick chat with him before the game because he'd sent me a message to wish me a happy birthday, and I got around to replying and saying thank you. Looking forward to watching your boys. I think you're going to have a solid 3 or 4-0 based on the lineups. And he said, yeah, looking forward to watching them play. And then it ended up being completely not. You're going to read his tweets out?
I'm going to read something from his article that he wrote for us last Thursday.
Go for it.
This is before the Leicester game. Arsenal were averaging 8 shots per 90 minutes. This is the second lowest in the Premier League at time of writing researching. When you combine that with last season's conversion rate for the attack, which at 13% was the best in the country, you average out with roughly 40 goals over the course of the season. I don't need to tell you that this is not particularly good. In fact, such is the extent to which it is not particularly good, that it would have been bettered by Burnley and Aston Villa in the last campaign and equalled relegated Bournemouth. So even if we are to assume that Arsenal continue their unprecedented conversion rate, they are only likely to match the goal tally of 3 sides who last year were about as threatening as a ransom note written by Mother Teresa. They have a huge creativity issue at the moment. Huge.
It's because they decided to sideline Mesut Ozil.
I don't know how they fix it at the moment. I think the best thing that fixes it is 4-2-3-1, Saka on the left, Aubameyang up front, and he probably plays Ceballos higher. It's probably the best way to fix it. It's going to take time to obviously integrate Thomas Partey into the team. It's worth saying that I think the disallowed goal should have stood. I think it was really harshly ruled out. Different set of referees and nobody blinks and it gets given and no one says anything. I think it was Xhaka on the line, wasn't it? It wasn't in Schmeichel's way. The goal should have counted. But Arsenal's second half performance was alarming. Leicester got to a stage where they felt very comfortable and confident, and you knew the longer it stayed 0-0, you could sense it. Vardy was going to come on and win the game for him. It's worth saying Under, who took several strides over the smallest distance I think I've ever seen to compose himself for Vardy's assist. And then when he hit the assist, I was like, keep it on the get goal. That'll do. And it was
Undertaker.
Perfect. Following that, yes, the Undertaker. Brilliant pass by Tielemans as well. Not for the first time this season. Tielemans playing brilliant through balls from deeper positions, by the way, this season. I didn't get the idea of Aubameyang playing through the right. I don't know what that is. We discussed that when they played Burnley in Gameweek 2 last year, when we was first talking about Aubameyang playing wide. Off the left, not bothered. On the right,
yeah, it doesn't work.
Never feel like he's going to get
Never
returns
feels
off the
like
right.
it's going to work.
It's all gone to pot since he said he came out and said, I want to be a legend here and all that when he signed the contract, basically. The flip is, I think they're defending quite well.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this after they played Liverpool and speaking about the Fulham, West Ham and Liverpool games being very, very different for Arsenal and not being able to work out if they were becoming a very defensive side. I think that's what it is. And I think we need to accept who's his teacher, right? It's Guardiola, right? I'm sure he's got his own ideas and his own methods, but like last week when they played each other, it was like they were trying to one-up each other, wasn't it? Guardiola is a defensive coach. People need to understand this. He thinks first defensively. And I think that's what Arteta's doing. And the difference between Arsenal and Manchester City is Arsenal don't have Kevin De Bruyne's and Bernardo Silva's and Riyad Mahrez's and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so therefore it becomes a lot about defensive shape and counter-attack. And at the moment, it's so obvious how good Aubameyang is. Let's be honest, he's a worldie, right? but everybody knows it. Nullify the threat. Leicester planned, in my opinion, for Castagne to play very, very deep in this game, expecting Aubameyang to play out in that position and tried to isolate situations on the left. They stuck with it because Arsenal weren't really hurting them.
What does Jamie Vardy have to do to get into your FPL team?
Drop about 2 million in price.
10 million. They've got a great run. And that's because you can't afford him as opposed to you don't think he's worth the money.
Jamie Vardy's always going to be a good FPL asset.
Leeds, Wolves, then Liverpool away, but obviously you might get space in behind. Fulham, Sheffield United, Brighton, Everton. Solid run until the middle of December. Good 7 or 8 fixtures. 6 goals in 4.5 games so far this season.
I have to say, because I've been critical of Leicester playing a back 5, this obviously really worked. And they'd be better off sticking with... Have they got the weekend, Leicester?
I just said Leeds, isn't it, this weekend?
Oh, yeah, Leeds. Yeah, they should play a back 5 again against Leeds, by the way. I think almost anybody should play a back 5 against Leeds. That's with the amount of numbers they attack with.
To be honest, play with 3 sitting midfielders. Is this the new trend? West Ham are playing a back 5. Chelsea did okay with a back 5. Leicester doing better with a back 5. Is this a new trend?
I don't think Leicester have been doing better.
It just worked this week.
Leicester won with this back 5, way to Manchester City and way to Arsenal. And I think if you almost relate it to England, I believe Southgate's been playing that system because he's scared of when England play against better teams. Let's be honest, Leicester fans might argue this, but Arsenal and Manchester City, generally speaking, have got more power to beat them, particularly obviously City, obviously. Arsenal's debatable at the moment, whether they are or they aren't at Leicester, better than Leicester. There's plenty who'll be listening going, no, James, Leicester are better than Arsenal. I hope so, by the way. But it seems to be suiting them in some of these bigger games when they've got it. The quality of the players better as well. I have to say, Fofana, I thought was outstanding. He really does look a good player. I think he's 5 in FPL, so probably not under consideration. Every week I finish my analysis on Leicester by saying not convinced, and I'm still not. From an FPL perspective.
I mean, they're 4th in the table.
I know, he's very good. It's hard to be critical. It's worth remembering they did win the first 3 games as well.
Yeah.
And have obviously had some disappointing results since. This was a big win because we spoke last week about they had a difficult 4 fixtures coming up, of which Arsenal was the first. And actually, if they had a bad month, then the pressure would start to build on Brendan Rodgers. A result like that's going to help. It was very noticeable after the goal. He was looking for someone in the crowd. He does that. He does like... I've said this before about him. I think he spends a lot of time in front of the mirror every day, Brendan Rodgers. I really do.
Let's talk about Brighton, West Brom. We've got 2 more games to get through, James. We've got about 10 minutes before we get into extra time, injury time and penalties. So, Brighton, West Brom.
Brighton. What happened in that second half?
just taking the table into consideration for a second. You've got Burnley, Sheffield United and Fulham all on 1 point each. Then you've got West Brom on 3, and then you've got Brighton on 5. And then above them, ironically, is Manchester United on 7. Who do have a game in hand, and Newcastle on 8. So Brighton have a couple of points clear on West Brom, and I don't think West Brom is the concern because Burnley and Sheffield United below that are going to improve and start picking up points here, especially Burnley. If they don't turn these performances and winning positions into more points, they're going to stay down there.
They didn't deserve to win the game yesterday.
No, in the second half they definitely didn't.
We've spoken about them a lot, the United game, stuff like that, where they have deserved more. They didn't yesterday.
Points win prizes, Brighton. Come on.
If the game had carried on until next goal wins, West Brom would have won. But the only team were going to win that game towards the end of it once they'd equalised. And they had a really good dominating spell before they equalised as well. Really stepped it up last 20 minutes. Krovinovic got quite high. Pereira was allowed to drift in off the right-hand side. Grant, ironically, was just about to be taken off before he scored and was still taken off. Robinson was quite direct when he came on. Perhaps that competition for places in an attacking sense might help them a little bit now. They've got a huge game at Fulham at the weekend, which I think Fulham even more so can't afford to lose rather than West Brom.
Yeah.
On Brighton, it's hard to put your finger on it because first half, they didn't particularly play well, but it was kind of in control. Really good battle between Lamptey and Diangana on the near side. Maupay felt like he was snatching at things earlier on the pod. Just didn't look like it was a bit short of confidence to me for whatever reason. He also should have scored. Johnson made one very good save with his feet, and I don't know if they got comfortable. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I feel I've seen this before with games against Brighton, where just that quality-wise have got the better players, but just not showing it.
Yeah.
I think the defensive issue, and they've now conceded 12 from 18 shots on target. Hard to criticise Matt Ryan, but this is possibly one where I felt like, you might have saved that actually. But they were shot defensively after the equaliser. You could tell in their body language they were scared. If you're scared playing West Bromwich Albion at home, not that home or away particularly matters at the moment, you've got an issue. And the issue might be as straightforward as Veltman played his first game and Lewis Dunk, who is their best player, was missing. And it might be as straightforward as that. I think control of the game, they'd be better off putting Ben White back into centre half, playing White, Byrne and Webster as the back three. Be very interesting at the weekend. Obviously go to Tottenham. It complete in terms of whether you want to captain Kane or Son this weekend. It's almost completely dependent on which side of the fence you sit on with Brighton. Do you look at it and go, wow, Kane and Son are two of the best finishers in the country. Brighton have conceded 66% of the goals that have been on their target. Or do you look at it and go, they've still got one of the best expected goals conceded in the league. So it really does depend. This is where you can manipulate stats to whatever your own
narrative. Yeah.
Exactly, your narrative and your preference. Depends which way you sit on that. The way I'll be sitting on it is they're the only two fucking options I've got. So I'll be captaining Harry Kane by default, almost definitely. But I suspect they'll struggle in the next two. After Tottenham, they've got Burnley, which you a little bit like yesterday. You think, clean sheet potential. Without Dunk, who obviously very rarely has missed games since they got promoted. That would seem the obvious where the issue was last night. Their leader was gone, and it was a problem. And balls will come into the box when they play Burnley. Yeah. Talking of which,
not buying Brighton or West Brom assets at the moment. I'm assuming very few are on your radar either in the short term.
No, I mean,
I do like Lamptey, but not at the price.
I've got Ryan and Walton, haven't I? So for me, if I go for the third, be it Morpay, Trossard, Solly March, shout out to the person who messaged me yesterday, Lamptey or whomever, I've got to be sure. Otherwise I'm stuck. Yep. I think I'm just more likely to go no thank you. Yep. I think before Palace felt like the right time to target Brighton players, now it doesn't.
And to all the listeners that have been waiting an hour and 20 minutes for the Tottenham rant,
you could have just signed up the Patreon.
Yeah. I was going to say, Jay, should we just wrap up the pod? If you can copy paste from Tottenham earlier in, edit it in, rerun.
Do the FPL
Control
bits.
C, Control V, paste.
Burnley being Burnley. I mean, Burnley should not have lost this game. Yeah. No way.
Yeah.
Very easy finishes 1-0 the other way, and if it had finished that way, Tottenham could have had no complaints. Massive threat from set pieces. As much as I praised Ashley Barnes earlier in terms of you don't want to play against him in a nuisance, Jay Rodriguez playing will be good for Chris Wood. Goodmanson being in the team gives them an extra added dimension in terms of the ball will come in from both flanks now. Ben Mee is close. That will help them. Although defensively they played well yesterday, but I think we really played into their hands in terms of how slow we were on the ball.
If Burnley play like that for the rest of the season, I don't have any concerns about them being stuck on the
improvement's
now.
Coming.
It's definitely there.
The improvement's coming already from, when they played Leicester in Gameweek 2, which was obviously their first game. It felt very sloppy and un-Burnley-like. It's worth saying they didn't have Tarkowski that day either. Slowly they feel like they're building into Burnley, which is part why I don't really want to sell Charlie Taylor, but I also look at the longer term fixtures for them and I think I'm not going to play him very often actually. But then as Turfy Topper keeps telling us, they'll keep clean sheets at times that you don't expect it, and last night was nearly one of them. You have to say they defended Tottenham better than anybody else has so far this season, actually including Everton in game week 1, because Tottenham did have chances in the opening half of that game. So it's credit to them. And what they did is, as I said, kind of talking about reference back to Southampton, Kane in the hole wasn't happening, sit with their banks. The centre-halves never leave position. They do never step out of position. So you can't have runners that empty into the empty space. The fullbacks only go forward when the ball's on their side and they're in comfortable position as well. Good from Burnley. They'll get better. On Tottenham, Region owners. we said on Clash of Correspondence on Thursday that me and Ricky Saunders said we thought that he might not play this game.
Yeah.
Because I think, and as I highlighted on the Patreon pod earlier, Mourinho picked a team that to deal with aerial balls and limit Burnley. It was a real defensive strategy I think the strategy was, we're going to stop them scoring. We've got enough firepower. We'll get one.
Yeah.
And is what happened. I mean, the way it happened wasn't by design. It was
the
fluke.
Mourinho masterclass.
If you want to say Mourinho masterclass, yes, but I think very easily would have lost. We were so poor on the ball. But for Region owners, my advice would be keep.
Are you turning into George Graham's Arsenal 1-0 to the Tottenham?
Oh yeah, after winning 6-1 and 5-2 in our last two away games. And to be fair to Mourinho's pre-match interview on the pitch, he said, this ain't going to be like the last two away games. He had a tactical idea of what he wanted to do with the game.
And he knew what to expect.
And it worked. Difficult. And I think for every other supporter of every other team, it's cringy. Trust me, I hated what I saw last night. But defensively, there were a lot of things which are detailed were better. Region will get back in the team. I think against Brighton and West Brom he plays. The interesting thing with the Brighton game coming up next, Burnley's obviously threat is the aerial. One of Brighton's biggest weapons is Lamptey. He ain't, in my opinion, he's not going to want Lamptey running at Ben Davies. Expect Region to come back into the team. On Bale, in terms of him not getting on the pitch, I think it was because Burnley, as I've mentioned previously, strong on that left-hand side with Taylor and McNeil. He felt at 0-0 he couldn't bring him into the game. Personally, I'd have brought him on and played him up front. Thursday, we'll get another look. He should play in the Europa League in Belgium against... who are we playing? Fucking Antwerp. Royal Antwerp. Cheers. Thanks, Suj. It's my group, not yours. But my instinct at the moment is that because of the energy that Brighton play with, that he probably doesn't start against Brighton either.
Yep.
You can get away with it more against Brighton. Brighton don't manipulate 2-on-1 situations, so he might decide that he can trust perhaps to play Aurier there at right back. Aurier and Doherty are just as bad as each other. I can't work out at the moment which one is worse. The benefit of Doherty, because I slagged him off earlier today and last night on Twitter, he didn't give any fouls away. That's why he played. Whereas Aurier can't help himself. But Doherty's recovery is awful. I'm not sure if I've seen a fullback who recovers worse since Alberto Moreno at Liverpool.
Ouch. That's damning, but to be fair, I think it's fair.
I think he's a winger. is what I'm beginning to think. And I know what the Wolves guys will say. Listen, for Wolves, he played in a very strict system that worked for them with protection.
3 at the back.
Toby Alderweireld must, and to be fair, Sanchez obviously got the recovery pace, but for Alderweireld, who's lost his legs, he must at the moment when he plays and plays inside one of them two clowns, must think, what? And yeah, you think this Tottenham team's going to challenge for the league title? Yeah, of course. We're going to win the league with Sissoko and Højbjerg in central midfield. Moving on, guys. That said, if we'd held on to either the West Ham or Newcastle games, we'd be top of the league at the moment.
Crazy.
And you could argue we deserved to. We didn't deserve to win last night. Harry Kane and Heung-min Son expect more in the next 2 games.
So there we go, James. Rundown of all the games. Hour and a half for everybody. Any early thoughts on what you're going to do this week?
I could roll. I could do -4. Like I mentioned, I like that Pereira to Lookman and Bale to De Bruyne. Appeals to me just to get on De Bruyne early.
But wait and see what happens with Bale in the
I'm not
Rugby
desperate
League.
for it. Reece James I'm going to have a second think about, because I know I've been very critical of it, but I agree with you in the upside of what it can be. And I quite like the idea of Trent, James and Alexander-Arnold. That's Robertson even. Yep. I like the 3 of them. Fuck it, it's no defence, is it? No. It's just 8 midfielders, basically. 8 midfielders, 2 defenders on the bench. I like the idea of that. Forward line will stay the same. Jimenez, Calvert-Lewin, Kane, as long as... I don't think Kane will play Thursday night in Europe. I don't think Heung-min Son will play either. I expect both to travel, and if they're needed, he'll use them.
For me, I'm going to be rolling unless I get news on Antonio that he's out for longer than 2 or 3 weeks. If it's just going to be a case of he misses Liverpool and then he'll be probably okay for Fulham, then I'll be rolling, and if not, then I may look to replace Antonio. Although it's going to be a bit difficult because I've lost a bit of value and I do want to keep him longer term. But other than that, I'll be rolling and captaining Kane more than likely. Captain
Kane, yeah. I think I'll be the same. I think Salah would still be the best choice this week, playing your team. Just. And by the way, we didn't speak about Salah at all, but if you did captain Mohamed Salah this week, don't beat yourself up. You made the right decision. Genuinely, you did. It was a better choice than. Was you on Kane as well?
I was on Kane.
He was on Kane. Salah was a better choice. Well, I mean, we don't own Salah. So if I'd owned Salah, I would have captained him. If I owned Salah this week, I would captain him again, I think, over Kane. Difficult to go past them at the moment. And just on captaincy, one piece of advice, as I don't normally give out too much, now is a good time to start looking at captaincy beyond game week 8.
There we go, guys. Thank you for tuning in to this episode, the Game Week 6 review. If you need more FPL content, as always, we are at the end of the month, so probably not a good time to sign up to our Patreon. But come Sunday, it'd be a great time to sign up to our Patreon. It's patreon.com/planetfpl, and you'll find all of the packages there. We have a great active Slack channel. We have additional podcasts every weekday for the patrons and other perks and stuff there as well. So patreon.com/planetfpl. In the meantime, it just leaves me to say, stay safe wherever you are around the world. If you're in America, go vote. Go vote for Biden if you're in America. Early voting is open.
You don't even live there. You can't tell them how to vote. I mean, most of us know how they should vote.
Me.
But
if you want to stay alive, because Trump's coronavirus is next level. And that's a podcast for another day. Stay safe, guys. Ciao for now.
Yeah, I won't be on that podcast. Be nice to each other, everyone. Cue music, please, man child.